Hi, so my name is Netra and I'm currently in Upper Six and I've been a member of the Inspiring Female Steering Team. And today I'm here with Tina Fordham, who is Head of Global Political Strategy at Avonhurst. So to start with, could you please give me a brief summary of your career and your current role today?
Sure. Thanks, Netra, for joining me today for this discussion. So as you said, my current role is partner and head of global political strategy at Avonhurst here in London, which is an advisory firm. We advise investors about political and legal developments. I've spent more than 20 years as a political analyst advising companies and investors about political development. So that's, in the current context, everything from Brexit to the US elections in November, to what the virus means for how we will all invest and do business. I've also been an advisor to the United Nations High-Level Panel on Women's Economic Empowerment and have also done research on gender economics. But most of my career has involved writing about, doing research, public speaking, and advising about global political trends.
All right, that sounds amazing. So you've had quite an unconventional career path. So how did you go from teaching English in Czechoslovakia to introducing politics as a major risk factor in investment analysis? And what motivated you to pursue a career in an industry that perhaps didn't really exist?
Well, the first thing I would say is that is maybe relevant for a lot of you watching today is that I'm probably what you would call a late bloomer today. I was a good student. I read English literature for my undergraduate degree, thought maybe about law, spent one summer as an intern in a law office and decided that wasn't for me. But in the period when I was studying, something amazing happened, and that was the fall of the Berlin Wall back in 1989, which seems like ancient history, but in fact, many of us were there to observe it. And I was a kid in California looking at these photographs of places that I had only, read about in the books that I was reading on my literature course, and thought, I'm going to go there. At the time, there was a recession. That might sound familiar to everybody there. And it seemed to me that with an English degree, that was certainly one thing I could do. I had no idea that it would lead me down this path, but I had always been interested in some combination of social science, people and what they do, politics, and of course, literature. So off I went with almost no money to Prague, Czechoslovakia, to teach English. And whilst I was there, actually did some research with the people that I was working on. I felt that transformation from communism to joining the world of democracies was the biggest thing that was going to happen in my lifetime, and I wanted to be part of it.
That sounds really interesting. So just following.
I had no idea how I would make a living, just to be clear. I just thought it would be interesting.
Yeah. So just from all of this experience that you've had, what do you think is the most valuable advantage you found during your career path?
Well, I think that also changes a little bit at different stages of your life. Something that I worry about now when, kids do get so much pressure on exams and so much advice, well-meaning parents, teachers, and everybody else. There's a lot to be said to giving yourself some space to try different things. Now in my stage of life, I'm in a position to interview a lot of people. I can always tell the people whose parents have set up a lot of internships for them. And I find I get much more out of people who tried to pursue their own path, even if that means trying something that maybe didn't work out. So the first one is to be, to take risks and to be a bit adventurous. I think that does pay off in the long run because it allows you, A, to discover new things, and B, to bump into opportunities that you might not have had otherwise. I realize you may not be hearing this from your parents, but if the question is what helped me, it was that, willingness to try things for their own sake. Although while I was there, I always made the most of it. As I said, whilst I was teaching English, I also did survey research and got involved in understanding where I was in a lot of different ways. So risk-taking, sense of adventure, curiosity. Follow your curiosity. If you're motivated to learn more about a subject or an occupation, you're probably going to enjoy doing it. And that is a quality, a feature that will get you through many years of working. If you do what somebody else wants you to do or what you think is practical, it can be boring. You'll want to drop it as soon as life gets complicated, such as when kids come along, and it just doesn't lead you to push yourself in the same way if you're not super motivated. I also think I like the expression to be brave, and the way that I try to explain that to my kids and to the young people that I've mentored. Being brave doesn't mean that you're not scared. It means that you do it anyway. And that's very, I think, very useful advice. A lot of people now see that I do lots of television interviews and ask me if I'm not scared. Well, I was definitely scared about the first 65 times I did it, but then it got a lot easier. But if I hadn't done it because I was scared, I never would have, gotten to a place where I found it comfortable. So those are the suggestions that I would make when considering what sorts of choices and paths to follow.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's some really great advice. So following on from this, I was wondering whether you had any inspirations that helped you go towards the career path that you're in now, and how important you think it is to have mentors in your life.
Well, I have mixed feelings about this, really, because I'm not sure I ever had a career mentor such as it is formally in any way. I am a believer in the idea that it's a good idea to cultivate allies wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And allies are a bit different from friends, right? Allies are people who will stand up for you, who will, help you push something forward. And I like that concept very much. It's not as maybe sentimental or emotional as friendship is. If you want to have a mentor, there's absolutely nothing to be lost by doing that. But I sometimes think there's an expectation that if you get the right mentor, that person will just magically unlock doors for you. A lot of young people that I speak to, I think, have a sense that there's a shortcut to having a successful career. And if there's anything to be learned from my story, I think it is that the long way around and the indirect route can also get you to a pretty interesting place. The more that you find it yourself, I think the more empowering that is, and the more confidence you will have. So mentoring's great, but I'd suggest developing relationships, mutual relationships, not one-way streets, with a range of people who you admire, even if they're doing something quite different from you. All of the people that we meet have something to share with us, and you have something to share with them. I once had a mentee, someone that I mentored as part of the Military Veterans Network at Citi, where I was Chief Global Political Analyst for 17 years. And this young man was a British Army captain, tank commander in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I was meant to be telling him about how things worked in a bank. But I would say that I learned at least as much from him as he learned from me, and probably more.
That's really great. You've mentioned some amazing skills that you've acquired during your time. And so I was wondering whether you had any other further skills that you've acquired to share with us. So any skills that you think that are valuable for the next generation of professionals, and what would you change, if anything, about your university studies?
Well, it was a long time ago. I'm not sure what subject I would read if I were going back now, but I do believe that the humanities are still underappreciated. So again, I think probably young people are told they need to do STEM and coding and science. And if you're that way inclined, or even if you're not that way inclined, you should probably push yourself to do it. But the things that I would highlight that have worked well for me. One is public speaking. And again, there are very few people on the planet who are born happy to stand up and, give a presentation in front of hundreds of people or go on television. You have to get over your fear and do it. But it helps no matter what career you're in. If you are a yoga instructor or a vicar or a lawyer or an author, public speaking will help you, and it will allow you to be more comfortable talking about whatever it is you do. And one of the great advantages that I've found from developing my public speaking skills is that I meet so many more people because I'm now the one who's not afraid to stand up at a conference and ask a question. People will come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, I liked your question." And that's a great way of getting on in the world and meeting lots of interesting people wherever you go. So public speaking, absolutely a must. Join the debate team. Do make videos, whatever it might be. Get involved in opportunities to develop your confidence around that. Writing, it's surprising how many people come into the workplace and haven't really developed writing skills. But I think that to be a good writer reflects the ability to be a clear thinker, a clear and logical thinker. And the last one is lots of us hate math. I am among them. But if you avoid everything that has to do with even arithmetic, you will find your choices much more limited, and that you just can't go as far. So again, force yourself. Even if you are in the social sciences or the humanities, or you want to sell your wares on Etsy, you need to be able to use a spreadsheet, and ideally to do simple statistical analysis.
Yeah, definitely. And I think definitely your point on public speaking, that's such an essential skill to have, just to speak in front of many people and get a clear point across.
Yeah.
So just to follow on from this, so you have two daughters, both at South Hampstead, and
Yes.
a full-time career in the city with frequent international travel. And on top of this, you're also a single mum. So what are your thoughts on having a healthy work-life balance?
Well, I used to travel frequently internationally, but that's all kind of on pause. But you know what? I really don't miss it. That certainly gets quite old soon. So one thing that's amazed me in many years of speaking to young women in the city and things like that is even 16-year-old girls ask about work-life balance. I guarantee you that 16-year-old boys are not asking about work-life balance. It doesn't really factor in, and so that phenomenon in itself is quite telling. Now, I may have a somewhat politically incorrect view on this, but I believe if you want to do something that's really interesting and even amazing, you're not going to have a lot of balance. You're going to be busy. Now, I like that. I like to be busy, but the way that I suppose that I've come to think about it is you can't, you can have a lot of what you want. Maybe even you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And so that means you're going to have to accept not being perfect at everything. It means not baking the birthday cake for every child's birthday. Once in a while, you can get it at Tesco's and the sky doesn't fall. Oftentimes in schools like the GDST schools, you've got very talented people who are perfectionists, and that helps enormously in your school career. But when it comes to life, don't be afraid to cut corners. It'll all work out.
So you've also had many professional honours and accolades. So have any of these moved you the most, and perhaps why?
Well, I'm very lucky to have been recognized for my very niche specialization as a political analyst working in the city for the last couple of decades. And there are lots of nice honors that you can get from that. I've been 5 times on the top 100 women in European finance and many other things. But the honor that I'm most grateful for was the appointment to the United Nations high-level panel by this UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon back in 2016, and that was on the back of my research on women in the economy and gender economics. So that was just a huge honor. I got to speak twice at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, which was very humbling, very much the kind of thing I probably would have dreamed of doing when I was a little girl. And just a complete surprise, because I didn't set out to be part of that. And it's an example, again, of where life can take you, I think, if you put yourself in the path of opportunities and challenges and adventures.
That's fantastic. You've already achieved so much, but what are your future career aspirations going forward?
Well, I have certainly exceeded my own expectations. Sometimes I like to say, especially as a very busy working mom, that we're just pedaling a bicycle, right? So you don't fall over. And I'm still very much pedaling the bicycle. I don't really have a lot of time to think about other things, but I just left a big corporation after 17 years at Citibank to join this small startup. So that was a new start, and it's given me a lot of energy to make that change. And I very much want to help make that business successful. It's the first time anyone has tried to combine political and legal advisory services in this way. So that's something new, and very much hope to write a book on the back of my research. Most of my research has looked at rising populism, democracy, and these kinds of factors. And I would like to turn that into a book. And I'd like to get more involved to reconnect with academia. I've done this to a certain extent on some advisory board roles, but this is another thing to think about as you move through your career. If you don't want to work full-time for a corporation anymore, the idea of portfolio careers, doing bits of different things, is increasingly easy to do. And I think that one consequence of the whole coronavirus phenomenon will be that a lot of people go that route instead of sticking with one employer in a traditional kind of 9-to-5 formal office setting.
Yeah, that's it. That was my last question for you today. So thank you so much for your time today, Tina. You've given us some invaluable advice. And before we finish, do you have any final thoughts to close our interview?
Was I supposed to have final thoughts prepared?
Completely fine if you don't. You've already given us all of your advice. It's been absolutely amazing.
Sorry, I was slightly caught off guard. Yes, I think I gave you all of my best lines, but I think be brave is really the best advice I have, and that means whatever you want to do, try it. And if something comes along that you didn't want to do, maybe try that too. It might take you down a surprising road, and that can lead to the best kinds of outcomes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.